Just 24 hours. That was all it took. A single brutal window of time that sent shockwaves through the battlefield and may have changed the trajectory of the Russia-Ukraine war overnight. Russian communications collapsed, radios went silent, command lines vanished. And suddenly, Russian soldiers, and including elite units hardened in Chechnya and Georgia, found themselves trapped in one of the most stunning battlefield disruptions of the entire Ukraine war. Not after months of siege, not after a slow, grinding offensive, in a single day. If you've been following the Russia-Ukraine war updates, you already know that the southern front in Ukraine has become one of the most complex and strategically important battle zones in modern warfare. Military analysts across NATO, European intelligence agencies, and independent war observers have repeatedly described this region as one of the most decisive fronts of the conflict. But what is happening right now in Zaporizhzhia is something far bigger, something that could reshape the strategic map of the war. Today on BCC News, we are breaking down everything you need to know. The sudden collapse of Russia's elite defensive formations, the mysterious technological blackout that paralyzed Russian command systems, and why this moment could determine the future of Crimea, the Black Sea, and Vladimir Putin's entire war strategy. Stay with us, because the story unfolding here goes far deeper than the headlines. And if you're new to BCC News, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel delivers deep geopolitical analysis, military intelligence breakdowns, and global conflict updates that you won't find anywhere else. Because in modern warfare, information is power, and right now the battlefield in southern Ukraine is rewriting the rules, the illusion of Russian control. Before all of this happened, the Kremlin was telling a very different story. Russian state media was declaring total control over Zaporizhzhia, total administrative control, total military dominance, a supposedly unbreakable defensive line. More than 130,000 Russian troops had been deployed across the region. Russian television broadcast victory maps with the entire oblast colored in the Russian tricolor. The message was simple: Zaporizhzhia was secure. But look closely at the images coming out of the region now, because something extraordinary has happened. Ukrainian blue and yellow flags are now flying over positions that Russian forces claimed as permanent strongholds only weeks ago. Satellite imagery, battlefield reports, and verified open-source intelligence from the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, reveal a very different reality. The Russian narrative of control is not just exaggerated, it is collapsing. And at the center of that collapse is a breach. A gap in Russia's defensive line 16 kilometers deep, a rupture slicing through Russian fortifications like a blade through dry earth. But this is not just territory lost. This breach strikes directly at something far more important: the logistical spine connecting Russia to Crimea, the very artery sustaining Moscow's entire southern war strategy, the fortress that was supposed to be unbreakable. To understand how shocking this breakthrough is, we need to understand the battlefield itself. Zaporizhzhia is not like the forests of Kharkiv. It is not like the urban ruins of Bakhmut. It is an enormous open steppe, flat terrain stretching for miles with almost no natural cover. From a military perspective, this landscape should heavily favor defenders. There is nowhere to hide. Every movement can be detected. Every armored vehicle can be targeted. The Russian army understood this, so they spent months transforming the land itself into a fortress. They dug massive trench networks. They poured concrete bunkers. They deployed dragon's teeth anti-tank barriers, layered minefields, artillery nests, and fortified defensive belts. Military analysts called it the Surovikin Line, one of the most extensive defensive systems constructed in Europe since World War II. Russia believed Zaporizhzhia had become an impenetrable wall, and then, suddenly, that wall collapsed. Not from overwhelming air power, not from massive armored assaults, but from something far more devastating: the technological moment that changed everything. Multiple intelligence reports now confirm a critical turning point. Russian frontline units in Zaporizhzhia were heavily dependent on Starlink satellite communication systems. These terminals were being used to coordinate drone operations, receive battlefield orders, and maintain command and control across dispersed units. But according to reporting cited by the Moscow Times in early 2026, those connections suddenly went dark. SpaceX reportedly disabled Starlink access for Russian forces operating illegally near the front lines after a request from Ukrainian authorities, and the effect was immediate. Russian units lost their primary communication backbone. A senior NATO official described the result bluntly during a defense ministers' meeting in Brussels. Removing that link placed Russian forces into a command and control crisis. In military terms, it was catastrophic. The central nervous system of an army had just been severed. Russian troops across the Zaporizhzhia steppe suddenly found themselves blind, deaf, and disconnected from command. And Ukraine was ready. Ukraine's lightning strike. The moment Russian communications collapsed, Ukraine's 33rd Assault Regiment moved. What followed was one of the most precise modern maneuver operations of the war. Ukrainian armored units surged forward. Within hours, they had pushed 16 kilometers deep into Russian positions. This was not the slow trench warfare that has defined much of the Ukraine conflict. This was classic high-speed maneuver warfare, the kind described in military doctrine, the kind rarely seen on today's drone-saturated battlefield. At the center of the breakthrough stood a small village, Kosivsky, a tiny point on the map, but a critical hub in Russia's supply network across southern Zaporizhzhia. When Ukrainian forces entered the village, Russian defenders could not mount coordinated resistance. The blue and yellow Ukrainian flag was raised over the ruins, and the first domino had fallen. Subscribe CTA, updated for BCC News. Before we continue, if you're finding this breakdown valuable, make sure you're subscribed to BCC News. Our team analyzes global conflicts, military technology, geopolitics, and battlefield intelligence to bring you the clearest picture of what is really happening around the world. These deep dive reports take hours of research using verified sources like ISW, NATO briefings, satellite imagery, and international intelligence assessments. So if you want to stay ahead of the most important global developments, subscribe to BCC News and turn on notifications now, because every update in this war changes the strategic picture. Closing section, rewritten. As this situation continues to evolve, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. From the Starlink blackout in Zaporizhzhia, to Ukrainian breakthroughs along the southern front, to partisan sabotage inside Melitopol, and naval drone strikes crippling the Russian Black Sea Fleet, every thread in this story leads toward the same conclusion. Time is no longer on Russia's side. What was supposed to be a short war has become a war of attrition that Russia is struggling to sustain. And with Ukrainian forces now demonstrating the ability to cut logistics, collapse defensive lines, and isolate entire formations, the battlefield dynamics may be shifting faster than anyone expected. Here at BCC News, we will continue monitoring every development using verified intelligence, military analysis, and frontline reporting. Because the story unfolding in Ukraine is not just about territory, it is about the future balance of power in Europe and the world. If you want to stay informed as events unfold, make sure you're subscribed to BCC News and turn on notifications so you never miss a major update. Thank you for watching BCC News.